Okay, so could you tell me a little bit about Another Earth and sort of the premise and what makes it different than other films that we've seen?
It really is different from other films that you've seen, which, I mean, I guess you can say that maybe about a lot of movies, but it's like a sci-fi romantic thriller. There's a lot of genres meeting in one place together, and it's the story of a girl and a guy who are strangers to one another, and there's an accident that happens that she causes that brings them together and sort of connects them in a way that they can't be separated. And the night of that accident is also the night of the discovery of another Earth, a literal duplicate planet in the sky, and it sort of weaves those two things together.
Now, you co-wrote the film with the director of the movie. How did you guys get sort of turned on to this idea of doppelgangers and this whole idea of having another you out there?
That's it. There were a couple of things happening around the same time that I think led to it. One is that Mike was making video art, and I mean, Mike is an insanely talented artist, and he would pick up the camera and just shoot these things, and they were beautiful. I mean, they were very of real life. He would be shooting things and putting it together, and we were inspired by I was inspired by the work he was making. I think we were both inspired by the freedom with which he was making it. Like, he was just doing it. And around that time, he made a video art piece where he interviewed himself in split screen. So it was like Mike on one side being like, "Yo, dude, what do you think?" And Mike on the other side being like, "Well, I think this, bro." And it was like back and forth. And we watched that. We're like, "This is cool." And we started thinking like, what would it be like if everybody could have this conversation? If everyone could confront themselves, like what would that dialogue be like? And the story sort of was born out of that.
Now, there's some interesting, it's a very human drama. There's also a lot of science that's almost sort of snuck into the movie. There's voiceovers, people watching TV, listening to the radio. What sort of research did you undertake to plug that science into the movie?
You know, we were listening to a lot of Dr. Richard Berenson's books on tape, and he's an astrophysicist who has a wonderful way about him in that he can talk about the cosmos in storytelling, like with a sense of history and romance and poetry, making it all like digestible for an audience that knows nothing about string theory or like how you actually arrive at E=mc². I mean, you don't have to know any of these things, and yet you can go on a pretty deep journey with him about what's happening on the cutting edge of the cosmos, sort of the study of the cosmos right now. So we were listening to a lot of his work, and then we went to DC and actually met him and interviewed him. And Mike wrote him a very impassioned letter, and I think at first he was like, "I don't know that I'm really interested in science fiction. That's not what I do." And then we met with him, and I think we sort of fell in love with each other. You know, this is a real love affair of the way that he was seeing things and the movie we wanted to create. And so he would do these interviews with us, and we got really inspired by the truth of science, and then a lot of our fiction came out of that.
And it seems like science fiction and science almost chase one another sometimes. It's like, you know, we have iPads and iPhones that look like Star Trek communicators and stuff, you know, so...
That's such a cool thing to say.
Yeah, well, I think I've always found that really interesting, and I think movies like this, when you push the idea forward and then the science almost catches up to the idea.
Yeah,
you know?
That's a cool thing to say, because science is weird like that. Like, at one point it was science to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, and like that was the belief, and that was science, or that the Earth was flat. I mean, we're constantly having these like huge paradigm shifts in the way that we understand how things are. So, I mean, it's actually, we made this movie, and then afterwards we found out, we started reading Brian Greene's work, and he talks about multiverse theory, and in this book he's literally saying that a duplicate me and a duplicate you is not just like possible, it's probable. And his idea for that is that there are a finite number of particles in the universe, and if you shuffle that like a deck of cards, you shuffle that deck infinitely, you're bound to get the same order of cards with the same particle arrangement. So there are probably multiple Earths in which everything that's happening right here, this interview, this conversation we're having, is also happening on another version of this planet. So when we read his book after having made the film, we were like jumping up and down, being like, feeling vindicated in some way that like this totally absurd concept that we'd come up with is kind of true. So science fiction, I think, can become science.
Science fact.
Science fact.
So I wanted to ask you just one more question. If you could tell me a little bit about you're director and co-writer and everything. He was also shooting and editing the movie. How much does that sort of change the movie making process? And I would imagine there's advantages to that when it's
so awesome. It's so awesome because Mike's vision for things is so complete, and he's not working through an intermediary. He's touching all of it. So it's like he has this like umbilical cord to the creation. We're writing it together. Has this vision for it as a director. He's picking up the camera and shooting it. Like everything is literally as he's seeing it, and then he's cutting it and reshaping the story. And all of it he does with such a sense of poetry. I really think that Mike makes films the way that like painters paint. It is the entire process is of him, and it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful to collaborate with someone like that who has such a strong vision and then the talent to execute it on every level.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
it's great
you.
talking to you.